Hello, this is LOL I See You, or Pagrom by name on World of Warcraft. And I'm gonna read you a beautiful story called Outland Girls Are Easy by D.D. Ward. The A is capital in Ward. I don't know really how to say this, but I'm assuming it's D.D. Ward, okay? It was not common for Simon to get a personal summon from King Varian when the sealed paper was handed to him via messenger telling of urgent news and an even more urgent assignment to be given. Simon packed his gear and took wing on the fastest griffin available from the Flame Master from Sentinel Hill. As he sailed above the trees of his familiar homeland, his curiosity and excitement grew. He was one of the youngest paladins in the service to the king, and as such, he felt he was often underestimated. I know it's so hard when you're so young and you have to be a paladin for the king. His age, he had a firm grasp of the light. Yes, back in my days, that was not so easy. The winds blew through his long blonde hair, and the mist of the altitude cooled his hairless face. His arm creaked as he shivered slightly. Metal armor on griffin back, flying at the speed they were did not make a warm journey. His growling excitement warned him as he saw the grand gates of Stormwind open up before them. Once landed, the young paladin took no time to get his land legs, but back summoned his holy seed as soon as he was able. With great haste, he rode swiftly to the castle, taking note of the many people in the trade quarter selling trade wares. Several guards saluted him, or simply nodded as he passed. He dismounted and dismissed his steed as the great halls of the castle opened. The guards stood aside, holding their halberds straight at their attention stance. Simon walked purposefully towards the throne room, hearing voices discussing something. As he drew near, he heard the unmistakable baritone voice of King Varian. The king was seated on the throne. His eyes were intense but calm, and his long raven black hair was tied up into a sweeping ponytail. Beside him stood Jane of Proudmoore, who served not only as an advisor to the king, but it was also well known that she was an envoy of the Alliance. Rumor had it she was actually friends with the Horde war chief, Thrall. This is not what made Simon pause, however. 4 strange people stood near the throne, talking with the king. Although dressed in armor and robes of various stations, they were anything but the normal type of people Simon was used to seeing. The leader of the troop was about 6 feet tall, with blue skin and fiercely glowing white eyes. 2 horns sprouted from his forehead to curve over, ridge bones and a sweeping hairline. Beneath some neatly trimmed facial hair, 2 tentacle appendages grew down from the sides of his chin that sported rings and jewelry. His massive torso was held up by 2 powerful haunches, ending in slightly turned furred cloven hooves. A tail swept lazily behind him, also decorated his rings. Simon had heard the Draenei ever since they joined the Alliance. After the ship crashed on Azeroth, he had never actually met any of them until now. You also noticed a female among them. Her sweeping horns framed a delicate face, and his shapely body was prominent under close-fitting robes. She, too, had blue skin, the color of the ocean depths, as well as a slender tail and cloven hooves that extended from the shapely, if not goat-like, legs. Simon found he could not tear his gaze from the exotic Draenei until he heard King Varian address him by name. Ah, Simon Simon Bright Morn, King Varian said in a voice that filled the throne room with authority. Simon approached the throne as all eyes turned to regard him, including the wondrous female Draenei. He bowed low at the foot of the throne's dais was a word. My king, he said with full respect, I came as quickly as I could. You are a perfect example of the light, my young paladin, King Varian said with pride. The Draenei all nodded in agreement and approval. This mission you are on to take is of the most importance. Simon stood as the king beckoned him to stand. What is my mission, your majesty? You are to take Valen, a Draenei priest of great renown, to our encampment in the Barrens, the king replied. You two will provide much-needed prayer and confidence in the forces there as we strive to stem the hood from Terry Moor into Ashenvale. Simon had heard of the Alliance forces heading en masse to the Barrens. He was very excited at the news. He grew even more excited as Valen stepped forward. It turned out to be the exotic Draenei female he had admired the whole time. Oh, this is getting scandalous. She bowed to him, the customary greeting, and he smiled. Her smile brightened her face more than he imagined, and he almost didn't hear the king's next statement. Of course, your majesty, Simon replied, turning his attention to the king. We will leave immediately. Simon found Valen to be intriguing. Instead of a horse, like his steed, she rode atop of a large alien animal called an Elk. It was a rather large animal, but proved to be as agile as a horse, 'cause that's how Elks are. They're agile as a horse. Talking to her was rather difficult as the Elk was twice the size of his horse, and he had to shout to be heard. It wasn't until they reached Ashenvale they found the inn that the two travelers could finally talk. The night elf innkeeper apologized, but there was only a single room available. It seemed that the war in the forest left many rooms full for priests and druids to work the magic and help fallen soldiers recover. Simon was a little nervous about the arrangement, but hid his secret happiness at the interesting turn of events. Valen asked many questions about Azeroth, claiming that she had not ventured very far from the Ixidor. They exchanged stories, and more than a few mugs of night elfin wine, which seems to have affected Draenei more than Simon expected. I fear I have drunk too much elven spirit, Valen remarked in her lifting, accented common. Her accent was like music to Simon's ears. With the help of a little drunken slur, he found it to be totally irresistible. Forgive me, Valen, Simon said with an embarrassment. I must say, I had never had the pleasure of meeting a Draenei before, and that you are quite a specimen. Valen laughed, a bright titter that Simon found even more endearing. She shifted her legs and even daintily covered her mouth. Simon found her to be strangely desirable. His eyes unconsciously looked over her, and the candlelit tavern, her skin took on a dark and sky appearance, and he found that her body was completely smooth except for the very tops of her hooves. Her long black hair was brushed back with once curving and slender angles that were not only functional in ways, but extremely alluring. Having a tail and hawk's legs made her posture very prominent, as it caused her to square her shoulders, puff out her chest, and very ample breasts, and stick out a voluptuous wreath to balance. I will admit that you haven't been around many humans either, she whispered, as if sharing a deep secret. She leaned forward, and Simon grinned as he leaned across the table to hear her. I must say, I find your face to be very attractive, not in an alien manner. He couldn't help but notice that she too was examining him with wondering and interested eyes. He was no expert on her racial features, but it seemed his eyes glowed just a bit brighter. Finally, her eyes locked on his, and they sat staring for a few hard beats longer before Simon spoke. Perhaps, he began, leaning in closer to her and taking on Perhaps, he began, leaning in closer to her and taking her drained mug from her hand. We should retire to our room. Val had grasped at her eyes widened a little in surprise. Simon worried for a moment that he had been too forward, until she stood with the grace of a gazelle and nodded towards the stairs leading to their room. Simon stood as well, drinking the last of his wine and nodding thanks to the innkeeper before following Valen up the stairs. He took the time to lustily watch her ample hips sway to and fro as he hobbled half drunk up the stairs. Once the door closed softly behind them, they stood looking into each other's eyes, taking in the movement and allowing the wine to squash any uncertainty they might be having. They smiled, giggled a little like children, and blushed. I'm not afraid how to start this interracial act of coupling, Valen whispered. What's he trying to do in this situation? Well, she replied, running a nervous hand over one of her smooth horns. Normally, a female and male put their horns together in a sort of mating ritual. However, seeing that your humans not have horns, I think it would either crack your skull in the impact or render you unconscious. Ah, yes, Simon agreed. That would be a problem. Valen did a parted lip and coyly scraped the tip of her hose on the floor. And, what the humans do in this situation? She asked. In response, Simon approached her and ran his hands down his shoulders, brushed away her hair, and gently pushing the fabric of her robe off. She gasped as he took her lips to his. Her lips were not human, but warm and full just the same. Simon kissed her tenderly until she seemed to relax and kiss him in return. She ran her hands across his arms, feeling the strong muscles made by years of sword practice. He lowered his head and started kissing her shoulders. Valen sighed and moaned softly, letting him know that not only did Trey not kiss, but the attention her gave her beautiful blue skin was perfect. The fabric of her robe was pushed down further until it slipped off her shoulders and pooled at her hooves on the floor. Simon stood back, some still holding her close as he examined her now uncovered breasts. They were rounded and blue as the rest. They were rounded and blue as the rest of her skin, with violet nipples. Erect and beautiful, that were aching to be touched as the cool air of the room caressed them. Valen pushed her chest out even more, displaying them prominently for Simon to admire. Her excitement grew more and more apparent as her breath quickened, and she licked her lips seductively. Sensing that she was curious at what a human looked like, Simon pulled off his undergarment shirt. The drain I guessed in pleasure, seeing his muscular torso, like blonde hair adorned his broad chest, and his abdomen flexed as he breathed in and sighed. Tight flesh outlined the muscles, flexing in the light of the candle, making the shadows and highlights of Simon's naked body tantalize Valen. Hesitantly, Valen ran her fingers delicate and attentively over Simon's impressive chest and abdomen. Her breath caught, and she swallowed an invisible lump in her throat. Simon looked into her eyes. When they looked onto his, and gently but firmly ran his breast over her flat stomach and cupped her soft, bountiful breasts. Remember what she said about budding horns gave Simon an idea, lowering himself to his knees. Simon massaged and suckled the hard violet nipples. How sucking on nipples and headbutting is related totally goes over my head, but this is okay. Velen hummed in pleasure as he teased and licked her turgid buds with passion. Without warning, Simon bit down and pulled one nipple hard. Velen gasped and cried out as her eyes flew open in shock. Her eyes began to crumble under her, and she was about to collapse until Velen grabbed both globes of her generous buttocks and lifted her up loudly in a primal cry of lust and pleasure. So Dread I do like it rough, Simon mused to himself. He continued to give her attention until she could no longer stand on her own. As if she had thrown all shyness out the window, Velen reached down and tugged at Simon's breeches. He stood kissing her fiercely, and as he helped her, with fumbling hands letting his breeches meet her robes on the floor, her hand wrapped around his hardening member. She gasped. By the light, she breathed as she stroked him into full harness. Oh, Simon, it's beautiful. I've never seen such... Oh, Simon, it's beautiful. I've never seen such a beautiful cock. I take it that mine is different from a male trainer, he mused. Not as large, she said, smiling, but the coloring and shape is very pleasing. She continued to stroke him as they kissed, devouring each other's mouths. His tongue danced with hers and even scraped her teeth with a small prick of pain. Simon turned out that Drina have longer, sharper canine teeth than humans had. They moved cautiously to the bed, and Simon gently laid Velen on the soft mattress. She propped herself on her elbows as she lay on her back with her legs spread open and her tail swaying lazily under her. Wanting to see if Adrena had similar anatomy, Simon kissed her flat stomach and pulled away her underwear. Much to his pleasure, she had the most beautiful pussy he had ever seen in his whole life. It was smooth, and it was soft and blue with the rest of her body. When he gently spread open her nuzzle lips, and this she enjoyed by cooing something and draining. He found the inside flesh to be deep purple as the blood rushed to the area, making it sensitive and wet. A slightly erect purple clitoris spewed out from a purple hood at the crown of a soaked pussy. And Simon licked it lovingly long and slow. Velen cried out in surprise and pleasure, suddenly gripping his shoulders and tightening her thighs. By the light, she cried out, humans like each other. Sometimes. Simon replied, smiling while still poised between his strong thighs. Do you like it? Oh, yes, she cried excitedly. I've never had a mate do that before. Please, do it again. I would love to, he said with a smile and a wink. Just take care not to kick me, okay? He gently tugged at her ankle, shaking one of her hooves to emphasize his point. Velen giggled and nodded as she lay back on the schoolgirl and arched her hips up to give him easier access. Simon blushed boyishly and dove back into her sweet womanhood with those agonizingly slow and strong strokes with his tongue. Velen gasped and moaned, pulling and twisting her nipples as he sweetly tortured his lips and tongue. Her tail whipped a few times like a cat until Simon grabbed hold of it to keep it under some control. When he had a firm grip on it, she suddenly arched up and came hard, gasping as if drowning in her own pleasure. So Her tail is also sensitive, he discovered. This was turning out to be very exciting. She rose suddenly, positioning herself on her knees and standing Simon up. Looking into his eyes, she started to look up and down his member. Her tongue was slightly longer than a human's and wrapped as much as it could around his whole head shaft. She cupped and massaged his scrotum as she licked Shafted tip. "Do humans lick nails like this?" she asked. Simon grunted some. Her tongue felt good. "Yes," he replied. "Only females tend to suck on the shaft of a cock more than lick." Helen looked at his hot, throbbing member cradled in her hands as she contemplated. "You mean like this?" she asked before opening her mouth wide and plunging his entire cock down her wet, warm throat. It was Simon's turn to gasp and lose the feeling in his legs. "Oh, gods above, yes," he hissed in ecstasy. He remembered her long, sharp teeth and added, "Just be mindful of your teeth. It's very sensitive." Helen hummed an affirmative reply as she wiped his cock in her mouth, slurping and sucking gently, applying more pressure with her tongues and cheeks. He stroked her horns as her head bobbed with his strong strokes, and her fingers massaged and gently squeezed his scrotum. She hummed in pleasure, matching his groins as he felt his body heat up and his scrotum tighten up. He must have felt it too as she began to suck harder, intensely stroking his shaft with a hand as her lips enveloped him more before he could give her a warning. Simon grabbed her horns tightly. She grabbed him around the waist, pulled a hand deeper into her mouth as he exploded into a stream after stream after stream of his warm cum. She swallowed almost greedily, moaning in pleasure as she applied pressure to his cock and squeezed his scrotum, milking him all he could release. Simon sank to his knees on the edge of the bed as she freed his member from her mouth. "Amazing," she said, excitedly licking her lips. "Human ejaculate tastes delicious." He shared a laugh at the surprising revelation and kissed deeply. Val impressed him until she both worked themselves into a lustful need once more. "Are you ready for this?" Simon asked her. "Are you ready to couple with a human?" As if in response, Helen quickly turned around and positioned herself on her hands and knees, displaying her firm round buttocks and soaked weeping sex. "Take me, human," she purred. "I'm ready for this." Making a mental note that Draenei preferred it from behind, Simon moaned at her and let his hard cock into her wet folds. Almost instantly, her pussy flexed around him, taking in his length and girth. He slowly pushed on it, letting her womanhood swallow him fully all the way to the roots. Velen moaned in ecstasy and watched her back, throwing her head back and forth and grabbing the sheets. Simon stopped as he filled her fully and adjusted his position onto the bed and drove downward into her. The results were better than he imagined. Velen watched her back to such an angle that she was able to almost look him in the eyes. He took this opportunity to grab his shoulders as his pace increased, sometimes leaning forward between strokes to kiss her, tapping her buttocks with his thighs and give her deep, small strokes. Velen moaned and writhed, gasping and Draenei. She moaned out a few words in common as he started to fuck her harder. "Oh, by the light," she gasped. "Harder, Simon. It feels so good. Just do it harder, please." Simon was rather accommodated by her, pounding her with all his strength. The Draenei was literally screaming with ecstasy. The bed creaked in protest under them, and Simon fears that the dress might be too much for the furniture to take. Damn the furniture, he thought. This was the best sex he had ever experienced. Fallon threshed and moaned under the beautiful onslaught of Simon's love-making. Although he was not as large as a drain eye, he certainly made up for it in sheer passion. She felt the juices flowing in small rivers down her thighs, and Simon's wonderful human yak filled her again and again. She wanted to come so badly. She felt the insides coil slowly, and she knew she was close. Her pussy wept for release. Oh, Simon, he gasped and moaned. Please, make me come. You torture me so exquisitely, my wonderful human. Oh, please, please, do it. Simon was already fucking her as hard and fast as he could. If the bed didn't give out for one to him, his hips and back certainly would. Already his muscles were protesting and his cack was swelling inside her. I'll be damned if I had to come before she does, he thought. Not her, not this beautiful creature he had explored so wonderfully. He suddenly thought of a tail that thrashed against him as he backed her. Reaching down, he gripped it tight and stroked the base of her tail as if it were masturbating. The result was fantastic. Valen tensed up like a bow and trembled. She cried out until her voice faded away into a whisper. She soaked his cock and scrotum as well as most of his thighs. As well, he continued to plow deep inside her. The feeling of an orgasm and the walls constricting on his cock was almost what so much to Simon to take. I'm Karen Valen, he gasped. Do it, come inside me, she cried, looking over her shoulder at him with begging eyes. We are different species. Do not worry. Just fill me. Of course, if you do that, you just want to get pregnant, you stupid drain-eye whore. With that, Simon thrust deep into her womb and came. As the last spurt of his love filled her canal, Simon collapsed with Valen on the bed that also seemed to creak in relief after their intense sex. The human and drain-eye panted and struggled to calm their fiercely beating hearts as Valen turned with Simon, still inside her, to clutch him close to her chest. They lay for several moments, sweating and spent until their heartbeats and breaths emerged as one. The end.